Boy finds dog trapped in the middle of the desert, but upon discovering the reason, Ethan had been walking for over 2 hours under the scorching sun of the West Texas Badlands with only a half-empty water bottle in his worn-out backpack. The 12-year-old boy had left home early to gather dry firewood, a task he did almost every day to help his family, but this time he had wandered farther than he should have. That's when his eyes caught something that made him stop immediately. In the middle of that vast expanse of sand and thorny scrubland, a dog was tied to a weathered wooden post, panting with its tongue hanging out. The animal, a yellow-coated medium-sized mutt, let out a weak bark upon seeing him approach as if asking for help. "Good Lord," murmured Ethan, running toward the animal. The dog drank the water from the boy's bottle with a desperate thirst, as if it hadn't had a drink in days. Ethan stroked the animal's head, feeling how hot its fur was from the sun. "What are you doing here all alone, dog?" It was then that he noticed a wooden plaque hanging from the post, with some words blurred by time and sun. Ethan tried to read it, but could only make out a few words. Waiting, return, Sarah. The boy examined the rope that held the animal. It was a complicated knot, well made, the kind he knew well. His heart raced as he recognized that type of tie. It was exactly like the knots his grandfather George used to make on the ranch, before the terrible fight that split the whole family apart a few years ago. "This knot," Ethan whispered, trying to undo it with his small hands, but it was too tight. The dog licked his hands in gratitude for the water, and it was then that Ethan noticed a worn medal hanging from the animal's collar. He moved closer to read the engraved initials, SM, and below, almost faded, the year, 2019. Determined to free the animal, Ethan looked for a sharp rock and began carefully cutting the rope. The dog remained quiet, as if it understood it was being helped, but when he finally managed to free it, the animal refused to leave. "Come on, boy, let's go." Ethan tried to pull it by the neck, but the dog resisted, barking softly and pulling toward the post. It was then that Ethan noticed the animal was trying to show him something. The dog scratched the dirt around the base of the post, and the boy decided to help it dig. After a few minutes, his fingers touched something different from the dry sand. It was a tightly wrapped plastic bag buried shallowly. Ethan carefully pulled it out and opened it. Inside were several old photos and some folded documents, protected by another smaller plastic bag. His hands trembled as he saw the first photo. It was him, very small, in the arms of a young woman with brown hair and a sweet smile. Both were next to the same dog, only as a puppy. "But what?" Ethan turned the photo over and read on the back, "Ethan and Mom Sarah, March 2018. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing." Ethan flipped through the other photos with his heart pounding. All of them showed the same woman with him as a baby, and with that dog. There were photos of the woman playing with the dog, others where she was tenderly holding the animal's snout, and some where the three of them appeared together in what seemed to be the backyard of a simple house. Among the documents, he found a birth certificate, his own. It was written there, Mother Sarah Miller Jones. The name he had never heard spoken at home. His father, David, always only said that his mother had left when he was very little, and refused to say more on the subject. The dog remained agitated, sniffing the photos and barking softly, as if recognizing the scents. Ethan carefully folded everything and put it in his backpack, deciding to take the animal home. Perhaps there he would find answers to the questions that had tormented him for years. During the entire walk back, the dog followed Ethan obediently, but every few meters it would stop and look back toward the pole, as if it didn't really want to leave that place. "Come on, Goldie," Ethan had decided to give the dog a name. "You're staying with me now." When they reached the small holding where he lived with his father and his grandmother Martha, the sun was already setting. The simple house of exposed brick stood at the end of a little dirt road, surrounded by a few trees that offered shade to the yard. Mrs. Martha was in the backyard hanging laundry when she saw her grandson arrive with company. The 68-year-old woman, her graying hair tied in a bun, let the clothes fall from her hand when she saw the dog. "Ethan," Where did you get that dog?" Her voice came out trembling. "I found him out in the scrubland, Grandma. He was tied to a pole, almost dying of thirst." Mrs. Martha approached slowly, and the dog ran toward her, skipping and wagging its tail as if it knew her. The grandmother's reaction was even stranger. She knelt and petted the animal with tears in her eyes. "Buddy, my God, is it really you, Buddy?" she murmured. "Buddy? Grandma, you know this dog." Before Mrs. Martha could answer, the sound of David's pickup truck echoed down the little road. The 42-year-old man was arriving from work in the city, where he did masonry jobs. When he got out of the vehicle and saw the dog, his expression changed completely. "What the hell is that dog doing here?" His voice was loaded with anger. "Dad, I found him in the Badlands. He was almost sick with thirst." "Take that animal away from here right now," David shouted, making the dog hide behind Ethan. "David, for God's sake!" Mrs. Martha tried to intervene. "No, Mom. That dog is not staying here another minute." "But why, Dad? He didn't do anything wrong." "Because no. And that's final." Ethan had never seen his father so upset. David had always been a serious man of few words, but he had never shouted like that. The boy decided to insist. "Dad, I found some things with him." Ethan took the photos from his backpack. "Do you know this woman?" The silence that followed was deafening. David turned pale upon seeing the photos, and Mrs. Martha covered her mouth with her hands. The dog remained glued to Ethan's legs, as if sensing the tension in the air. "Where did you find this?" David asked, his voice choked. "It was buried in the place where Buddy was tied." "Dad, this woman is my mother, isn't she?" David held the photos with trembling hands, looking at each one as if they were relics from a lost time. His expression mixed anger, sadness, and something Ethan couldn't identify. Perhaps it was longing. "Dad," Ethan insisted. "Yes," David whispered. "She's your mother. Sarah. And why did no one ever tell me about her? Why did you always say she had just gone away?" "Because it's better that way." David handed the photos back to his son. "And that dog is going back to where he was. I'll take him back tomorrow." "No!" Ethan hugged the dog protectively. "He's all I have of my mother." "Your mother abandoned you, Ethan. She left and never came back. That dog will only make you suffer." "David, tell the boy the truth," Mrs. Martha finally spoke up, her voice firm. "He has a right to know." "Know what, Grandma?" David looked at his mother angrily, but she didn't back down. "Your mother didn't abandon you because she didn't love you, my grandson. She got sick." "Sick how?" "Mom, don't start with this." David tried to interrupt. Her mind started to get confused. There were days she couldn't remember things, didn't recognize anyone. It became dangerous for you, who were just a baby. Ethan felt the world spin. All those nights he'd asked himself why his mother hadn't loved him enough to stay. And now he discovered she had been sick. "Where is she now?" "We don't know," David answered. "She left in the early hours of the morning, took only Buddy and never came back. That was 3 years ago." "And you never looked for her?" "I did look," Mrs. Martha confessed. "But she didn't want to be found. She left a note saying she was going to wait on a ranch far from here until she got better, and that when that happened, she'd find a way to send word." The dog whimpered softly, as if understanding they were talking about his owner. Ethan realized then why the animal was tied in that specific spot. Perhaps it was a sign, a way for Sarah to communicate with the family. "Buddy was always very smart," Mrs. Martha continued. "Sarah taught him all sorts of tricks. There was a very strong bond between the two of them. That night, despite his father's protests, Ethan managed to convince the family to let Buddy sleep on the porch. The dog refused to eat anything, just lying by the door, staring intently toward the horizon. Ethan could barely sleep. His mind raced with questions about the mother he'd never really known. How was she now? Had the illness gotten worse? Why was Buddy alone in that place? The next morning, very early, the boy was awakened by insistent barking. He ran to the porch and saw Buddy scratching at the door and looking anxiously toward the road. "What is it, boy?" The dog ran toward the gate, then back to Ethan, then ran to the gate again. It was obvious he wanted to go out. "You want to take me somewhere, is that it?" Buddy barked once as if confirming. Ethan looked at the still silent house. His father and grandmother were asleep, and he knew if he told them his plans, he'd be forbidden from leaving. But something inside him said he needed to follow that dog, that Buddy had something important to show. He grabbed his backpack, filled his water bottle, and slipped out quietly with the dog. Buddy knew the way exactly, guiding Ethan along trails the boy didn't even know existed. They walked for over an hour, until they reached a part of the West Texas Badlands Ethan had never visited. There, isolated among some dry trees, was a very simple little house, made of bricks with a tiled roof. A small wooden fence marked off a yard where a few drought-resistant plants grew. Buddy shot toward the house, barking loudly for the first time since Ethan had found him. The boy followed, his heart pounding out of rhythm. A woman appeared in the doorway. She was the same one from the photos, only thinner, her face marked by the sun and the years. Her brown hair was longer and untidy, and she wore a simple, faded dress. When she saw Buddy, Sarah fell to her knees on the ground. The dog jumped into her arms, licking her face as she cried and laughed at the same time. "Buddy, my boy, you came back." It was then that she lifted her eyes and saw Ethan standing there, watching the scene. The recognition was immediate and devastating. "Ethan?" Her voice was a whisper full of disbelief. "My son?" "Mom?" was all Ethan could say. Sarah stood up slowly, as if afraid he would disappear if she made any sudden moves. Her hands trembled as she reached toward her son. "You've grown so much. You're so handsome. Why did you leave?" The words came out before Ethan could think. I was sick, my love. Very sick. I was afraid I might hurt you by accident." "But are you better now?" Sarah hesitated before answering, and Ethan saw pain in her eyes. "Some days yes, some days no. That's why I brought Buddy with me, to help me on the bad days." "And why was he alone out in the scrub?" "I tied him there because—" Sarah stopped, as if trying to remember something. "Because I wanted someone to find me, someone from our family. He was always very clever, knew he could bring you here." Ethan slowly approached his mother. She was smaller than he imagined, more fragile. But when she hugged him, he felt a warmth he didn't know he missed. "I missed you every day, my son," she whispered in his ear. "Me too, Mom. Even without remembering you clearly, I missed you." They stayed there embracing, with Buddy circling around them, wagging his tail happily, as if he had finally fulfilled his mission. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Sarah invited Ethan into the house. It was very simple. A small living room, a bedroom, a basic kitchen, and a bathroom. But it was clean and tidy, and the walls were decorated with dozens of photos of baby Ethan, far more than the ones he had found buried. "You have all these photos?" "I took with me everything I could the night I left," Sarah explained, preparing some lemon balm tea. "On days when my mind gets confused, I look at these photos and they help me remember." "And the illness, what's it like?" Sarah sat at the simple wooden table petting Buddy, who wouldn't leave her side. "Some days I wake up and remember everything. You, your father, Grandma Martha, our life. But other days—" She paused, looking at her own hands. "Other days I wake up not knowing who I am, where I am, what year it is. I get scared, confused. That must be really hard. That's why I had to leave. Once, when you were little, I had a bad day and almost dropped you. Your father was desperate, and I realized I couldn't take care of you anymore." Ethan felt a tightness in his chest. Imagining his mother going through that alone was too painful. "And how does Buddy help?" "He's amazing," Sarah smiled, stroking the dog. "On bad days, when I get lost, he brings me objects that help me remember. He brings me the photos, leads me to the mirror so I can recognize myself, barks when I leave the house without purpose. It's like he takes care of me." "Then why did you leave him tied to the post?" Sarah was silent for a moment, as if organizing her memories. "Because in recent months, the bad days have increased. Sometimes I go 3-4 days without remembering anything. Buddy gets desperate, unable to help me. I thought if he guided someone from the family here. You wanted us to find you. Yes, but I was also scared. What if you didn't want me back? What if I had a bad day in front of you and scared you? Ethan reached out and touched his mother's hand. I want to get to know you better, the good days and the bad. Sarah cried again, but this time they were tears of relief. They spent the whole morning talking. She told him about his first months of life, about how he was a calm baby, and how Buddy always stood guard by the crib. She told him about the dreams she had for his future, about how she wanted to teach him to read, to fish, to care for the animals. And Dad? How did he react when you left? Your father... Sarah sighed deeply. He loved me very much, but he was also scared. He tried to convince me to seek treatment in the city, but I was ashamed. I thought people would laugh at me or that doctors would put me away far from you. Was he angry? He was hurt. He said we could face the illness together, but I thought that was selfish of me. A child needs a mother who is present, who remembers her child's name, who doesn't get lost inside her own home. But now you remember everything. Today is a good day, Sarah smiled sadly. But I don't know how I'll be tomorrow, or next week. Buddy, who had fallen asleep on her lap, woke up and ran to the window, barking softly. Outside, the sound of a pickup truck approached. Someone's coming. Ethan stood up to look. It was his father, and he didn't look happy at all. David got out of the pickup with Mrs. Martha, and both wore serious expressions. "Ethan!" David shouted. "Get out here now!" Sarah turned pale and stood up nervously. "He didn't want you to look for me, did he?" "No, but I needed to meet you." David knocked hard on the door. "Sarah, I know you're in there. Open this door." Sarah took a deep breath and went to answer, with Ethan and Buddy by her side. When she opened the door, the silence was awkward. David and Sarah looked at each other for long seconds, and Ethan could see the pain in both their eyes. "David," Sarah whispered, "why did you do this? Why did you send Buddy to get the boy?" "Because I wanted to see my son." His voice was firm now. "And because I need help." "What kind of help?" "The illness is getting worse. The bad days are more frequent. I'm afraid of getting completely lost and never coming back." Mrs. Martha approached and hugged Sarah affectionately. "My dear, why didn't you come to us before? I was afraid you wouldn't want me near Ethan." "Of course we do." Mrs. Martha looked at David. "Isn't that right, son?" David remained silent, clearly wrestling with conflicting emotions. Ethan decided to intervene. "Dad, we can help her. She's my mother." "Ethan, you don't understand. Her illness is serious. She can have dangerous episodes." "But she has Buddy, and now she has us too." "David," Sarah approached him, "I know you're still hurt by me. I understand. But look at our son. He grew up without a mother because of me. I can't give back those lost years, but I can try to be present for the ones that remain." "And when you have a bad episode? How do I explain to Ethan that his mother doesn't remember who he is?" "We explain it together," Sarah answered. "I can teach him how to handle the bad days, like Buddy does." Buddy barked softly, as if approving the idea. "Dad, I want to try," Ethan said. "Please." David looked at his son, at Sarah, at his mother who was nodding in approval, and finally sighed. "It won't be easy." "The best things in life never are," Mrs. Martha replied. "All right," David agreed reluctantly. "But we'll do this right. First, you're coming to town with me tomorrow to talk to a doctor." "David, It's not negotiable, Sarah. If you really want to be part of Ethan's life again, you have to take proper care of your health." Sarah nodded, visibly emotional. "And another thing," David continued, "you're not coming home yet. We'll take it slow, supervised visits first to see how Ethan adjusts." "I understand." "What about Buddy?" Ethan asked. "Buddy stays with your mother," David answered, surprising everyone. "Seems he takes care of her better than any of us." That afternoon, the family spent hours talking in Sarah's simple house. Mrs. Martha helped prepare lunch. David fixed a window that was stuck, and Ethan heard dozens of stories about his early childhood. Sarah showed a little notebook where she wrote on good days reminders for the bad days. Things like, "Your name is Sarah Miller Jones. You have a son named Ethan. Your dog is named Buddy. You live alone because you have memory problems. On the bad days, when I wake up confused, I read this notebook. Sometimes it helps, sometimes it doesn't. Can I write something here? Ethan asked. Of course, my love. Ethan took the pencil and wrote in careful handwriting, Your son Ethan loves you very much and wants to be close to you always, on the good days and the bad. Sarah read it and cried again. Thank you, my son. As the sun began to set, it was time to go back. The farewell was difficult, but now there was hope in the air. Buddy barked sadly when he saw Ethan walking away, but Sarah calmed him down. He'll be back tomorrow, Buddy. Now we have a family again. On the way back, David drove in silence, while Mrs. Martha and Ethan talked in the back seat about the plans for the coming days. Dad, Ethan called, thank you for letting us try. I just hope you understand it won't be like in the movies, Ethan. There will be hard days. I know, but she's my mum and you still care for her, right? David took a while to answer. I never stopped caring for your mother, son. I just didn't know how to help her. Now we know. Together. Mrs. Martha smiled in the back seat, happy to see the family reuniting after so long apart. That night, Ethan lay in his bed with his heart full of conflicting emotions. He was happy to have found his mother, but also anxious about the challenges to come. He fell asleep thinking of Buddy, of how the dog had been the link that brought everyone back. The next morning, David kept his promise and took Sarah into town to see a doctor. Ethan stayed home with Mrs. Martha, but spent the whole day anxious for the results. When they returned in the late afternoon, Sarah was holding a paper and had a calmer expression. The doctor said it's an early form of dementia, she explained, but that there are medicines that can slow the progression and techniques that can help me during episodes. What kind of techniques? Ethan asked. Memory exercises, fixed routines, objects and photos that can serve as anchors to help me return to reality on confusing days. And Buddy? The doctor was impressed when I told him about Buddy. He said dogs can be specifically trained to help people with memory problems. Buddy already does it naturally. David seemed more relieved after the appointment. The doctor also said family support is crucial, he added, that if we do everything right, she could have many years of normal life ahead. Even with the illness, it's not a death sentence, just a challenge we'll face together. From that day on, they established a routine. Ethan visited his mother every afternoon after school, always accompanied by his father or grandmother. Sarah began taking the prescribed medicine and doing the exercises recommended by the doctor. Buddy proved to be even more incredible than they imagined. When Sarah had a bad day, the dog would guide her to the mirror so she could recognize herself, bring her the little notebook, and even block the door when she tried to leave the house disoriented. He's better than any nurse, Mrs. Martha commented, watching Buddy care for Sarah during a milder episode. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were difficult days, like when Sarah had an episode while Ethan was visiting. She looked at her son with empty eyes and asked who he was. Ethan was devastated, but Mrs. Martha taught him to be patient. On the bad days, don't try to force her to remember. Just stay close, speak kindly, and wait for the moment to pass. What if she never remembers me again? She will remember my grandson. A mother's love is stronger than any illness. And Mrs. Martha was right. The next day, Sarah woke up lucid and apologized for the episode. I vaguely remember you were here yesterday, my love. Sorry if I scared you. Don't apologize, Mom. It's not your fault. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. As the months passed, Sarah began to feel more confident about having greater contact with the family. The medicines were helping, and the bad episodes became less frequent and less intense. David, who had been reluctant at first, began to relax in the presence of his ex-wife. They talked about Ethan, about the past, about hopes for the future. The hurt was gradually replaced by understanding and affection. You weren't to blame for the illness, Sarah, he said one afternoon, as they watched Ethan playing with Buddy in the yard. It took me a long time to understand that. And you weren't to blame for being scared. It was a difficult situation for everyone. But we got through it, right? We're getting through it, she corrected, smiling. During this time, Ethan learned a lot about patience, about unconditional love, and about how families can rebuild even after years apart. He created routines with his mother, reading together, teaching her about the things he had learned in school, listening to stories of her childhood. Buddy remained the tireless guardian. He developed an incredible ability to predict Sarah's episodes, becoming more agitated in the hours preceding them and more protective during moments of confusion. One day, Ethan had an idea. "Mom, how about we make a new album with pictures from now of our family reuniting?" "I'd love that, sweetheart." They began taking photos together. Sarah and Ethan cooking, playing with Buddy. David teaching his son how to fix a fence while Sarah watched. Mrs. Martha telling stories to everyone on the porch. "That way, on the bad days, I'll have recent pictures to help me remember how good our life is now," Sarah explained. But life still had a few surprises in store for them. One morning, Ethan arrived at his mother's house and found her very agitated, with Buddy barking insistently. "Mom, what happened?" "Ethan, I'm so glad you're here. There's a woman here who says she knows Buddy." Outside the house, a woman of about 70 waited patiently. When Ethan went out to speak with her, Buddy ran toward her, wagging his tail. "You must be Sarah's son," the woman said. "My name is Joyce. I live on the ranch next door, about 3 kilometers from here." "You know Buddy?" "Yes, I do. Your mother showed up at my house a few years ago, lost and frightened, during one of her episodes. Buddy led me to her. Ever since, whenever she's having a bad day, he shows up at my place to fetch me." Ethan was stunned. Buddy didn't just look after his mother, he had created a support network for her. "How many times has this happened?" "About 6 or 7 times. Buddy is very smart. He learned that when your mother gets very confused, he needs to get help. And you always helped." "Of course, son. Sarah is a good person. On the days she's well, she always comes by to help me with the plants, to talk. We're friends." Ethan called Sarah outside and introduced the two women. Sarah was moved to learn she had a friend looking after her without the family's knowledge. "Joyce has always been very kind to me," Sarah explained. "On the days I wake up lost at her house, she gives me lemon balm tea, shows me photos, helps me get home when I'm better." "Why did you never tell us?" "Because I wanted you to know that I can take care of myself, at least most of the time. I didn't want you to think I'm completely dependent." David, who had arrived at that moment, extended his hand to Joyce. "Thank you so much for looking after Sarah all these years." "It was nothing. She does the same for me when I need it. That's how it works here in the Badlands. We look out for each other." That revelation made David realize that perhaps it was time to take a bigger step in the family's reconciliation. That night he talked at length with Mrs. Martha and Ethan. "I've been thinking, maybe it's time for Sarah to come back home." "Really, Dad? She's taking her medicine properly, she has Buddy to help, she has Joyce nearby and the two of you as well. I think she can spend more time with us. And if she has a bad episode here at home, we'll face it together as a family. After all, that's why she sent Buddy to get us, right?" The next day, they talked to Sarah about the possibility of her spending a few nights a week at the family home. She was thrilled with the idea, but also anxious. "What if I have a bad episode during the night?" "Buddy will be here and so will we," Ethan assured her. "We've learned how to handle those moments. What if I get lost inside the house?" "We'll put up photos of you and little notes in every room," Mrs. Martha suggested, "to help you orient yourself." "What if—" "Mom," Ethan interrupted. "We'll figure it out as we go. The important thing is being together." Sarah took a deep breath and agreed. Sarah's first night back at the family home was tense for everyone. David barely slept, staying alert to any noise. Ethan woke up several times to check on her. Mrs. Martha prepared chamomile tea to calm everyone's nerves, but the night passed peacefully, and Sarah woke up lucid the next morning, moved to be back in the home where she had been happy years before. "It's so good to wake up in this house again," she said, having coffee with the family. "The house was empty without you," David confessed. Gradually, Sarah began spending more time with the family, 3 nights a week initially, then 4, then 5. She helped Ethan with his schoolwork, taught old recipes to Mrs. Martha, and even helped David with small repairs around the house. Buddy adapted perfectly to the routine divided between the two homes. He seemed to understand that his mission now was to look after Sarah wherever she was. There were some challenging episodes. One night, Sarah woke up disoriented and tried to leave the house in the middle of the night. Buddy barked to wake the family, and everyone helped calm her until the moment of confusion passed. "Thank you, Buddy," David said, petting the dog. "You're the best alarm we could have." Another day, Sarah had an episode during lunch and didn't recognize any of the family. Ethan was sad, but had already learned to handle these situations better. "Hi, I'm Ethan." He introduced himself gently. "You might not remember right now, but I love you very much." "You seem like a good person," Sarah replied, without hostility. "Why do you love me?" "Because you're my mother, and mothers always deserve love." Even without memories, Sarah smiled at him. "What a polite boy. Your mother must be very proud of you." "I'm sure she is," Ethan replied, swallowing his tears. The next day, when Sarah regained her lucidity, Ethan told her what had happened. "Even without remembering anything, I knew you were special," she said. "A son's love always finds a way to reach his mother's heart." As the months passed, the family's dynamic settled naturally. Sarah officially moved back home, but kept her little house in the West Texas Badlands as a refuge for days when she needed peace and quiet. Joyce became an extended part of the family, visiting regularly and helping when needed. David and Sarah, although they hadn't resumed their marriage, developed a solid partnership based on their shared love for their son and mutual care. "We don't need to be a couple to be a family," Sarah said one day. "The important thing is being there for each other." "I agree," David replied. David. What matters is Ethan having his parents nearby. Ethan grew up observing this unique dynamic and learning valuable lessons about forgiveness, understanding, and unconditional love. He became exceptionally mature for his age, developing an empathy and patience that impressed everyone. At school, he sometimes told his friends about his family's special situation, educating others about memory diseases and showing that people with these conditions can still lead full and loving lives. "My mother has an illness that makes her forget things sometimes," he explained, "but on the days she remembers, she's the best mother in the world. And on the days she doesn't, I still take care of her just the same." Buddy continued to be the silent hero of the family. Besides caring for Sarah, he also became Ethan's confidant, always present when the boy needed company or was worried about his mother. "Thank you for bringing my mother back, Buddy," Ethan would whisper to the dog on nights when he couldn't sleep. "You're the best friend our family could have." The dog responded with affectionate licks, as if he perfectly understood the weight of his responsibility and the family's gratitude. 1 year after the reunion, the family decided to throw a party to celebrate. They invited Joyce, some neighbors, and even the doctor who was following Sarah, who had become a family friend. "When I first saw you," the doctor said during the party, "I didn't have much hope that you'd be able to adapt so well, but you've proven to me that family love really is the best medicine." "And that dogs are the best nurses," Mrs. Martha added, making everyone laugh. Buddy, as if he knew he was being praised, wagged his tail and barked once, drawing more laughter from the crowd. During the party, Ethan gave a simple but moving speech. "A year ago, I thought I had saved a dog in the middle of the desert. But really, he was the one who saved our family. Buddy taught us that true love doesn't give up, even when things get tough. Thank you, Buddy, for bringing us back to each other." Everyone applauded, and Buddy ran to Ethan's lap, as if he wanted to thank him for the recognition. Sarah, who was having a particularly good day, stood up to speak as well. "I spent 3 years thinking that protecting my family meant staying away from them. But I learned that protecting the ones we love means being present, even when we're not perfect. Thank you for giving me a second chance to be a mother." There wasn't a dry eye at the party. As the night wore on and the guests left, the family gathered on the porch of the house, as they did every night now. It was a sacred moment where they talked about the day, about plans, about memories. "Dad," Ethan said, watching the stars, "if you could go back in time, would you change anything?" David thought for a moment. Maybe I would have tried to be more understanding from the start. But you know what? If things had happened differently, maybe you wouldn't have learned all these important lessons about patience and love. And I wouldn't have learned that I'm stronger than I thought, Sarah added. And I wouldn't have learned that families can take different shapes, Mrs. Martha said. And I wouldn't have learned that even in the hardest moments, there's always hope, Ethan concluded. Buddy, lying at Sarah's feet, sighed contentedly, as if approving of everyone's conclusion. I think Buddy agrees, Sarah laughed, stroking the dog's muzzle. That night, everyone slept soundly, with the feeling that, finally, they were where they were supposed to be. The family was complete, not in the traditional way they might have imagined years before, but in a unique and special way that worked for them. Ethan fell asleep thinking about how unpredictable life can be. Just over a year ago, he was a boy who had grown up without a mother, not knowing why. Now not only did he have his mother back, but he had also learned about compassion, about forgiveness, and about how love can overcome any obstacle. Buddy slept in Sarah's room, always alert for any sign that his owner might need help, but that night he slept peacefully, knowing his mission had been successfully completed. David, before falling asleep, looked out the window toward the room where Sarah slept and felt a peace he hadn't experienced in years. He had learned that loving someone doesn't mean trying to change them, but rather accepting their limitations and finding ways to support them. Mrs. Martha, the family matriarch, fell asleep smiling. At 68, she had witnessed one of the most beautiful examples of reconciliation and forgiveness she had ever seen. Her family was united again, stronger and wiser than before. Sarah had peaceful dreams that night. In her dreams, she was in a green, flower-filled field, running freely with Buddy and Ethan, without any shadow of confusion or forgetfulness. She would wake the next day with this dream fresh in her memory, and it would stay with her throughout the day, like a gift of hope. The following days brought the family's normal routine: Ethan going to school, David leaving for work, Mrs. Martha taking care of the house, and Sarah dividing her time between helping with household chores and doing her therapy activities. Buddy continued to be the link that kept everyone connected. When Ethan came home from school, the dog would run to greet him, then go get Sarah so she could also greet her son. When David came home from work, Buddy would do the same thing, making sure the whole family gathered on the porch for the sacred moment of conversation. "He's become our social director," David would joke, "always organizing our get-togethers." "Buddy understands family better than a lot of people," Sarah would reply, petting the dog. A few weeks after the party, Ethan had an idea that would further change the family dynamic. "Mom, what if we started a project together?" "What kind of project, sweetheart?" "We could create a small vegetable garden here in the backyard. That way you'd have an activity for your good days, and on the bad days, taking care of plants could help calm you down." Sarah loved the idea. Gardening had always been a passion of hers, and the activity of caring for plants really could be therapeutic. "And the best part," Ethan continued, "is that plants don't care if you're having a bad day. They just need water, sun, and care." David enthusiastically supported the project, and Mrs. Martha suggested plants that grew well in the region. Joyce, when she heard about the idea, brought seedlings from her own garden to contribute. "Medicinal plants are great," she suggested. "Lemon balm for calming tea, mint for stomach issues, aloe for cuts. It's good to have these things on hand." Creating the garden became a family project. Everyone participated. David built wooden planters, Mrs. Martha prepared the soil with organic compost, Ethan and Sarah planted the seeds and seedlings, and even Buddy helped by digging holes, though not always in the right places. "Look, Buddy's helping!" Ethan laughed as the dog dug enthusiastically. "He's doing drainage," Sarah justified, laughing too. As the plants began to grow, Sarah developed a routine of caring for them every morning. On days when she woke up confused, Buddy would lead her to the garden, and the act of watering and tending to the plants helped her reconnect with reality. "It's amazing how working with the soil calms me," she commented to her doctor during an appointment. "Even on bad days when I touch the plants, something inside me remembers who I am." Horticultural therapy is scientifically recognized, the doctor explained. Contact with nature really does have calming properties and can help with neurological reconnection. You mean Ethan's idea has a scientific basis? Your son is very wise. He instinctively found one of the best therapies for your condition. Sarah was proud of her son. Ethan, at 13, demonstrated a maturity and sensitivity that impressed everyone around him. The garden also became a social gathering place. Joyce visited regularly to exchange knowledge about plants. Neighbors would stop by to admire the garden, and even Sarah's doctor asked to learn about the project during a social visit. "You've created something truly special here," he remarked, watching Sarah explain each plant to Ethan. "This is more therapeutic than any medicine I could prescribe." Ethan began documenting the garden's growth in a notebook, creating a sort of plant diary. But his notes went beyond growth data. He also recorded the conversations he had with his mother while tending the garden, the memories she shared, and the progress he observed in her mood and lucidity. "Today, Mom remembered a tea recipe her great-grandmother taught," he wrote in one entry. "She said when the herbs in our garden grow, she'll teach me how to make it just the same. Mom had a confused day yesterday, but when Buddy brought her to the garden, she began to calm down. Plants are truly magical," said another entry. Mrs. Martha, watching her grandson write, suggested, "Why don't you turn this into a story, Ethan? The story of how a boy found a dog in the desert and how it brought a family together." You think it would be interesting? I think it would be inspiring. Many families go through similar situations and need to know it's possible to overcome. Ethan liked the idea and began working on a narrative about the family's experience. Sarah, on her good days, helped by remembering details and feelings. David contributed his perspective on the challenges he faced. Mrs. Martha offered the wisdom of someone who saw it all happen. "And Buddy? How do we include his perspective?" Ethan asked, joking. "Buddy is the silent hero," Sarah replied. "Silent heroes don't need to speak. Their actions say it all." The story project became another therapeutic activity for Sarah. Recalling events helped her strengthen neurological connections, and seeing how strong she had been throughout the process boosted her self-esteem. "I thought I was just a sick person who had abandoned the family," she confessed one day. "But writing our story, I realize I was brave. I did what I thought was best to protect you all. And you really were brave, Mom. Now we just have a different kind of courage, the courage to stay together." Buddy, as always, was present during these conversations, lying at the family's feet like a silent guardian of their memories and dreams. As the story Ethan was writing took shape, the family decided it could be useful for other people in similar situations. David suggested they send it to Sarah's doctor, who treated many patients with memory issues. "Maybe our experience can help other families," he said. "And maybe they can learn the importance of companion animals in these situations," Sarah added. The doctor was so impressed with the story that he asked permission to share it with other colleagues and with support groups for families dealing with dementia. "You don't know the gift you're giving to other people," he said. "Real stories of overcoming are more valuable than any medical manual." Ethan's narrative ended up being published in a local medical bulletin, and soon they began receiving messages from other families who identified with the experience. One lady wrote, "My husband has Alzheimer's and sometimes doesn't recognize me. Reading about how you handle the bad days gave me hope and practical ideas." A man commented, "My father developed dementia, and I was thinking of placing him in a home. After reading your story, I'm going to try to find ways to care for him at home." An entire family sent a letter. "Our dog has always been very attached to our grandmother. Now we understand he may be helping us in ways we never imagined. We're really helping other people," Ethan said, reading the messages. "That's how it works, my grandson," Mrs. Martha explained. "When we share our experiences, we multiply the possibilities for healing and hope." Buddy, listening to the conversation, wagged his tail as if approving the positive impact his story was having on the world. 2 years after the reunion, the family had found a unique and functional balance. Sarah had bad days less frequently, and when she did, everyone knew how to handle them. Buddy continued to be the dedicated sentinel, anticipating needs and offering comfort. Ethan, now 14, had become an exceptionally empathetic and responsible young man. His teachers commented on his maturity, and he often helped classmates going through family difficulties. David and Sarah developed a solid friendship based on mutual respect and shared love for their son. Although they were no longer a romantic couple, they were effective partners in raising Ethan and caring for each other. "We proved that family doesn't have a single shape," David reflected during a Sunday lunch. "What matters is love and commitment." "And presence," Sarah added. "Being there in the good and bad moments, and having an amazing dog who keeps everyone together," Ethan finished, making Buddy bark happily. The vegetable garden had expanded and now included a small flower area, in addition to the medicinal plants and herbs. Sarah had become known in the neighborhood for her gardening knowledge and her willingness to help others with plant advice. "Who would have thought I'd become the local plant expert?" she joked with Joyce during a visit. "You've always had green thumbs," Joyce replied. "You just needed an opportunity to bloom again." Sarah's doctor was so impressed with her progress that he began using her story as an example for other patients and families. "You've created a model of community and family care that should be studied," he said during an appointment. "Sarah is among the patients who have best adapted to treatment that I've ever seen." "It's because I have an incredible team," Sarah replied, looking at Ethan, David, Mrs. Martha, and Buddy. "Medicine alone doesn't heal anyone. It takes love, understanding, and purpose." Buddy, as if understanding he was being praised again, placed his paw on Sarah's hand, drawing smiles from everyone. The story Ethan had written continued to impact people. A local university contacted them, asking to interview the family about the experience, interested in studying the role of companion animals in the care of people with memory problems. "Would you like to participate in research?" the professor asked. "Your experiences could help develop better treatment protocols." The family agreed, happy to contribute to something bigger. During the interviews, each shared their perspective on the journey they had traveled. "What would you say to other families going through similar situations?" the researcher asked. "Don't give up," David answered, "and accept help, even if it comes in unexpected forms." "That love isn't perfection," Sarah added. "It's being present even when things get tough. That patience is a superpower," Ethan said, "and that sometimes animals understand better than humans." "That family is who is present, not necessarily who shares the same blood," Mrs. Martha concluded. The researcher was visibly moved by the answers. "And Buddy, what role does he play currently?" "Buddy continues to be our guardian angel," Sarah replied, petting the dog. "He taught me that caring for someone isn't an obligation, it's a privilege." Buddy licked her hand, as he always did when receiving affection. The research ended up being published in a scientific journal, and the family's story gained even more visibility. They began receiving invitations for lectures and events about family care and animal-assisted therapy. "I never imagined our experience could have such a big impact," David commented after a lecture they gave at a medical school. "It's because our story is true," Ethan replied. "People can feel when something is real." During one of these lectures, a veterinary student asked an interesting question. "How do you think Buddy developed these caregiving abilities?" Sarah thought for a moment before answering. "I think Buddy always had these abilities, but they developed because he had someone who needed him. When we truly love someone, we discover capacities we didn't even know we had." "That applies to humans too," Ethan added. "I learned to be patient and understanding because my mother needed that from me." The lecture ended with a long round of applause, and several people approached afterward to thank them for sharing their experience. Driving home that night, the family reflected on how their lives had changed since the day Ethan found Buddy in the middle of the West Texas Badlands. "3 years ago, I thought my life was over," Sarah said, gazing at the stars from the porch. "Today, I feel it has begun again in an even more beautiful way. And all because a dog decided our family deserved to stay together," David added. "Buddy always knew what was best for us," Ethan concluded. Buddy, lying at everyone's feet, sighed contentedly. His mission continued, but now it was a mission of maintaining happiness, no longer one of seeking reunion. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this moving story about how family love can overcome any challenge. Did Ethan make the right choice by following Buddy to his mother? How would you handle a similar situation? Leave your honest opinion in the comments. We love reading every one of your messages. And don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other stories that touch the heart.